Hello, everybody. My name's Ed Pavlik. I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, and my partner here is.
Frank Lawton in London, United Kingdom.
We're doing Gynec Garage again today, and the questions that we're dealing with is how does risk vary for women with a family history and with regard to diet, being a family history of ovarian cancer? Today, we're going to consider two papers from the Journal of the National Cancer Institute, excuse me. The first one is titled Ovarian Cancer Risk Factors in Relationship to Family History. And the other one is the association between diet quality and ovarian cancer risk. This work is important because it illuminates factors that may have roles in risk and survival. Also today, we're going to present reviews from both human and artificial intelligence. Well, let's start off with one of these papers and cover it as best we can. We'll start off talking about the family history component. It should be realized that we're talking really about whether a prime relative, mother, father, sister, has had ovarian cancer or breast cancer. That really elevates the risk by itself to about tenfold above the general population, and it can be raised to probably another tenfold or slightly more if there's a BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation. So the sum and substance of this paper is that both high-risk women with a family history or without a family history have similar evaluations with regard to the risks of only having one child, having more children, hysterectomy, tubal ligation, having the fallopian tubes removed, taking oral contraceptives. Now, there were some differences, and what I'd like to do is show you where those differences originate. And that is right here in this particular paper. If I can blow it up a little bit, you'll see it a little better. But what we can see here is if we look at risk, which is what this paper is all about, that family history and having family history and not having family history have about the same risks of having ovarian cancer. So there's really little effect on risk. However, there is an effect on survival, and some of the effect on survival are greatest with regard to some of these factors. So you can see with serous ovarian cancer, the greatest increase in the greatest effect on survival is occurring when there's postmenopausal hormone therapy. And then with mucinous, the greatest risk is with oral contraceptives. With clear cell, endometriosis presents the greatest risk, and that's both for clear cell and endometrioid. So there are some differences, but overall, the conclusion of this paper is that women with a family history of ovarian cancer have a substantially similar risk to the general population or to these common factors. Now, what's interesting about this paper is when we go to both Gemini and Copilot, we're asking them to consider this particular problem. One of them does conclude that these associations were similar for women with and without a family history, and that's Gemini. But the Copilot artificial intelligence misses this point. And so we have sort of a split determination between what's being done and what's being said. Our interpretation here is that those risks are similarly shared by women who have a family history as well as by those that do not. Now, the other paper that has to do with risk has to do with diet. And this paper is quite interesting in the sense that it starts off by taking a prospective approach where dietary information was prospectively collected. And it takes a collection of over 500,000 people. Now, some of those are men, so they have to be excluded. Some of those have already had ovarian cancer, they get to be excluded. And it whittles down the people who are eligible to 150,000 plus. And of those, just over 1,000 have had ovarian cancer. Now, what it wants to do is follow these people from the time that they actually were surveyed. And they're going to be surveyed by 3 different methods shown here in these columns. And what they do is evaluate different things. Now, I've color coded the same things that exist from one diet evaluation to another, showing you here that the score for these evaluations differ dependent upon what's being evaluated. And then finally, the conclusions of this study was that diet presents, no matter how you evaluate people on these diets, it presents no risk difference with regard to ovarian cancer risk. However, when you look at the first quartile versus the fifth quartile response scores, it shows that people who ate more healthy had a decreased risk of ovarian cancer. This was not really something that came out of the DASH evaluations. So if I can show you how this data emerged in the paper, this was a case of interpreting 2 tables.
Yes, yeah.
The first was to evaluate risk, and as we can see, when we evaluate on the left these 3 methods of evaluation, basically risk is about the same, shown in red here for all of them. Now, in contrast, when we interpreted them with regard to survival, it was really clear that there was a decreased risk for people who ate better, shown by these types of evaluations here, but that didn't hold up for the DASH. Now, those are pretty stable numbers, but we have to realize that they came out of relatively small group analyses. We're talking about, let's say, 200 to 400 people, as opposed to this big number that we started with, either 1,100 or bigger. Now, what's interesting also about this is that the artificial intelligence approaches through both Gemini and Copilot successfully concluded the same things that we as readers, have concluded. Now, there is there's one caveat I have to say you can pick out from the paper, and that's that the people who were in the most healthy eating groups were characterized by being older, so of course they would have a longer survival. They were physically active, which might impact upon their physical survival. They were non-smokers, once again, an effect upon survival. They had fewer comorbidities, and they had a normal BMI, all of which, has to do with longer survival, which was being evaluated in terms of eating better. So anyway, what we have are a look at risk factors, and we probably can say that as a beginning point, diet is important in terms of survivorship. Frank, what do you think?
Well, I think that's a very good point, isn't it? That I have to say, I was absolutely bewildered by the tables. They were just. It's like when someone in a paper describes the how they worked out the statistics, and they will say this was a Morrison blah 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 thing, and I glaze over. And when I looked at the table, unlike you, because I think you've done it much better than I could, you've actually highlighted where the things differ and where the things are agreed. But there's no doubt, is it, that people with a better there's no doubt people with a better diet will do better. People with a better diet tend to be in a higher socioeconomic status. They tend to look after themselves. They're not hypertensive. They're not overweight. So I can understand entirely that better diet doesn't the overwhelming causes of ovarian carcinoma are not dietary, at least within a Western environment. It may be in other countries where ovarian cancer may be associated with diet, but I think in where we were talking, in a Western diet does not influence the incidence of ovarian cancer. But of course, living healthily, being able to withstand the treatment of cancer of the ovary with high dose chemotherapy, whatever else, of course it's going to make some sort of difference. And I think you've picked up very well on the fact that the overall mortality is reduced by a good diet, which is probably the same thing as healthy living, but it doesn't actually prevent you getting the thing in the first place. Which I think they're important data. It what you actually want to say is to patients, have a good diet before you get the ovarian cancer. Don't bother to change your diet and do all that stuff afterwards, because that may be where the influence is. A lot of people will change their diet and try and get rid of so-called toxins and eat more fruit and vegetables after the diagnosis. If it's important, it should be done much, much earlier than that, I think. And in the other paper, the potential risk factors that are modifiable for the development of ovarian cancer are present in both whether you've got a family history or you haven't got a family history. The things that endometriosis you should treat it, but you're either going to get endometriosis or you're not going to get endometriosis. They're not modifiable in that sense. And things like multiparity and ovarian and oral contraception, these are things that are variable, but they don't seem to have any effect on ovarian cancer. So I think both of them say have as healthy a life as you possibly can, have treatment for things that we know will influence ovarian cancer, like probably endometriosis. And the others are, unless the overwhelming genetic influence or the genetic problems with ovarian cancer overwhelm everything else that we could ever possibly do. That may be the other problem, of course, that these could be important, but they just don't show up because ovarian cancer genetics are so overwhelmingly important. Dietary change is a good thing, but I'm not sure that either of these papers really say when that dietary change should occur. You should eat a good diet right from the beginning, I think, as soon as you're born, probably.
And I'm not going to argue with somebody who feels that, okay, they got a bad diagnosis, they're going to eat better now.
Yeah.
That may help, it
Oh,
may not, but this
oh,
paper doesn't address that.
I agree. You're absolutely right. And I remember working for somebody who was a very, very famous and very influential medical oncologist. And he would get very, very upset when a patient said, if I eat a lot of carrots or some other alternative medicine, he couldn't accept that that might actually improve either the prognosis or the well-being or their ability to feel that they are changing the prognosis. He was completely, it's not that he was against it, he just couldn't understand it. And I think a lot of these things say, if you can change your lifestyle, do so. It doesn't appear to do any harm. And the earlier you do it, it may be important. But if you've got a family history of ovarian cancer, I don't think it makes that much difference. Eat well, because it might stop you from dying from other things.
Well, Frank, I do have to make a comment here at the end. I have introduced us to artificial intelligence.
Oh God, yeah. That's just oh.
And I think the disclaimer we have to say is that artificial intelligence was not used to enhance you or I in terms of how charming or how good looking we are. So what you see is reality.
Absolutely, yeah. This is real intelligence or lack of it.
Okay, Frank, we
All right.
done it again. I look forward to doing this again with you.
Are you
Next,
going to do this AI stuff every time now? Are you going to find out what the robots are telling us? I think it's great fun.
yeah, I think that what we've done this time, we found that out of 3 papers, 2 of them were really not that intelligent by the robot,
Hmm.
and one of them really agreed with us. Now we
Yeah.
could argue the other way that we're not that intelligent and the robots, are right. But I don't think so. I think the real clear example, which we considered previously, had to do with inability
Negative
to
numbers.
interpret
Yeah. Yeah.
mathematics, a number.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So, but anyway, we'll try and do this. And of course, if they agree with us, we won't waste much time on it. We'll just simply say both Gemini and Copilot, had the same thing. The other thing
Yeah.
that's out there, there's a universe of artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence platforms that one could choose from. Um, and I think the difference here is both Microsoft and Google are the big guys on the block, and I'll continue to seek out how well they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
On
The only way we're going to find out how good their intelligence is to have it compared. I think I'd love to put three in the room together and just say, "You argue it out, guys." You just it's like putting an air conditioner and in a room and a moisturizer, and you just fight it out, boys. You determine whether or not it's too warm or too cold or too moist or too whatever. Anyway, that's not part of what we do just at the moment.
Okay, I'll see you in a month.
All right, my friend.
Take care.